Hi, everybody. So my name is Jessica Maddox. I am the Collections Management Archivist at Special Collections University Archives at the University of Nevada, Reno. And so I want to talk a little bit today about steps that you can take if you're interested in completing a collection survey to help implement protocols for Native American archival materials, which is sometimes known as PNUM or protocols. And I typically use protocols in when I'm talking about this. So before I start, we at the University of Nevada, Reno acknowledge that that UNR is situated on the traditional homelands of the Numu, Washu, Niue, and Numu peoples. These lands continue to be a gathering place for Indigenous peoples, and we recognize their deep connections to these places. We extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live and learn on their territory. So for those who might not be as familiar with protocols, they were developed collaboratively in a 2006 meeting of 19 Indigenous and non-Indigenous cultural stewards and cultural heritage workers, known collectively as the First Archivist Circle. The document, which was finalized in 2008, provides guidance for culturally responsive care and use of American Indian archival materials held by non-tribal organizations. The SAA formally adopted protocols in 2018, which is one of the reasons that we at UNR began the process of aligning ourselves with the protocols for Native American archival materials. This work helps to decenter donors and non-Indigenous researchers by working towards inclusion and equity for Indigenous communities, and in which the concepts of unrestricted access is not a universal goal. So before I start, how many people in the room have done a large-scale collection survey before? Hands, couple. Okay, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about is based on my experiences, not only in protocols, but doing another large-scale collection survey at UNR for our inventory, doing an inventory of everything we have. So some of this is influenced by that, but some of this is, I think, simple steps and easy steps that you can take to start working towards protocols, a protocol survey. So step one, oops, don't do that to yourself. So the step one kind of is what's your scope? And we all know what the goal is to find materials that could be culturally sensitive and need to be protected from an Indigenous standpoint. And I'd like to also say that I am a white settler archivist. So I and my colleagues, one who actually he is eligible for Indigenous membership in an Indigenous group in Nevada. But we all recognize that we are white archivists living and working with materials that were not created with Indigenous perspective sometimes. And so this also influences a lot of what we do and when we talk about our scope. So we asked ourselves, what are we surveying? What physically are we looking at to do this project? We knew the why, and we knew our collection. By looking at things more holistically, we can make decisions on what we wanted to actually look at now and we're going to have to look at later. So we kind of identified 4 different areas. So we've got our manuscript collections, which is the special collections materials, university archives, so created by the university or reflecting the university history and values. Then we have our photograph collection and we have our published materials. So you'll see those 2 are to the side because we did choose to not survey our photographs and we did not survey our published materials. The reason behind this is because our photo collections were both intellectually and physically separated from their originating collections. So we lost a lot of the context. This decision was made, and it's something that we are actively trying to figure out how to better deal with and to reunite the photographs with their context. So we made the decision to skip the photographs, even though we know there's material in there that most likely needs to be protected. We knew we couldn't do it at this time. And so that's okay. You don't have to do everything in the first one. The goal is to come up with a large idea of what you have and not necessarily look at the item level itself. We also skipped published materials because they create a whole other situation just innately in what they are. I kind of mentioned this, that we didn't really look at the items themselves. We were looking at descriptive information, not actually at the actual item. We are not cultural experts. We recognize we're not cultural experts, and we know that we will have to, at some point, continue building relationships and continue creating these points where we can have those who are experts come in and help us identify what is culturally sensitive and what can still be accessed, even though it is about Indigenous peoples. So that top level survey is what we started with. So the next step that I would recommend is just know who your groups are, know who you're working with, know which tribes are in your area, which Indigenous peoples are around. And that way you can begin to identify these things. So we knew when we started planning this that we were going to encounter Paiute, Shoshone, and Washoe peoples materials. But each of these groups is organized into different bands and cultural groups. And so we wanted to make sure that we were trying to identify as much as we could. And you never know who else you're going to find in there, which was once we started our survey, we thought, okay, Paiute, Washoe, and Shoshone, but I think we ended up identifying over 70 different tribes or cultural groups that we had materials related to them because of our anthropological collections. So you never know what you're going to find, but having a place to start from is what's important. So if you're not sure what groups you might encounter, there is a really great website called the Native Land Digital, and the screenshot that is in the background here is from it. It's a really cool interactive map where different groups are mapped onto their general, the territory that they generally have historically inhabited. And you can literally go through the globe, around the globe, and zoom in and zoom out and see what groups. And so I tried to capture that we were where we are in the Western United States. So this is a really cool website. I highly recommend go explore it because it's fun to play with and see what land you're living on. Another source for identifying federally recognized tribes is the Bureau of Indian Affairs website. Just remember that you may have Indigenous peoples in your area who are not federally recognized, and you may have that information still, and you need to work towards identifying it. Some of the work of colleagues who are in working with Indigenous materials and protecting cultural materials, Michelle Caldwell and those guys have helped other tribes try to gain that federal recognition, and you don't know if you have materials that may actually help them in that pursuit. So you can, the federal recognition shouldn't be the only driving factor of what you're identifying. You should try to find everybody and at least flag that you have it, so you can hopefully someday reach out to that group and say, hey, we have things about you. You may want this, which is kind of the goal of protocols, is to bring that knowledge to the people there. So general next step is identify what your search terms are. How are you going to find this information? We built a list, and then we ended up building a new list based on that first one, just because we were starting to see things were not quite lining up how we thought they were. And that, again, that's okay. You need to start somewhere, and having a list of general as well as more specific terms related to the people that are in your area is very useful. So Kim Anderson, the director of distinctive collections and the head of special collections at UNR, she and I wrote an article, and that's what some of this came from. And so this screenshot is our original list on the left and our updated list on the right. And we realized there were multiple spellings of Paiute, multiple spellings of Shoshone. Washoe was sometimes Washoe, sometimes it was Washeshu. So we had this huge variety of names going on. So we decided, okay, we need to be able to do more wildcard searches so that we're capturing a larger area, and we're seeing more results that way. One problem we do have is actually with the term Washoe, which is on the left, not Washoe. Washoe is the county that Reno is in. So there were a lot of false positives that came up. Be aware of that if you've got an area that is both a tribal name and a settler name. So we actually had to go back through all of the results that got flagged as Washoe and make sure it was not Washoe. So that's something to be aware of that we didn't recognize for longer than I would like to admit, but it was long enough that saying it now. So kind of get an idea of what you're going to have. This will be a good starting point. Kind of the last big step, and this was almost in some ways the easiest part, but also the hardest part, is what tool are you going to use? There are tons of tools out there. You've got the Google Doc Suite, then you've got the Microsoft Suite. You could use Trello. You could probably lots other ones too. We use Airtable. And my friend Sarah was actually at a presentation on Monday or Tuesday, and somebody had mentioned the Airtable cult. And it's true, we are a cult. We love our tool, and I will wax poetic about it if you ask me to. So I'll try to keep this brief of why we chose Airtable. It is got a lot of different options to it. So one of the best parts of Airtable is that it is a web-based collaborative tool. It's customizable. It can be used synchronously by multiple users, and you don't mess each other up, which is great. Another part is how linkable it is. So I'm hopefully conveying some of this on here. So you've got your base, which is kind of an Excel, like a worksheet. You've got your tables, which are kind of like individual books within or sheets. I think I said that backwards. But you can link the tables together within the same table, or like we did, we used an outside base that linked up to our protocol space. And so what this means is that we had all of our accessions and collection numbers in one place, and we had our survey going in another place, and we could pull that data directly without having to duplicate it. And this is, I think, the part of the powerfulness of it. So we didn't have to re-enter a whole bunch of things. And on top of that, we also have the ability to create forms. And the forms saved us from duplicating each other's work. It made it so that we could quickly go through collection records to be able to say, hey, this one's done, or this one has this information, and we were able to link everything back together. If anybody wants to see kind of what it actually looks like in action, I will happily show you what we have. I just didn't want to pull up our main one here because it's got all of our data in it still, and we want to make sure we're protecting things as we need to. So our Airtable, we had kind of 4 main parts going on to it. We had our review table, which was the big main table that's got all of our actual PNOM review in it, or protocols review in it, and that's where our survey is. We also have a table that's called material type, and so this is all based on what's in protocols itself. And so different documentary types, different what it is it a recording? Is it an image? Things like that. We also have our collections, which came from, like I said, the table that I already had created and that I already maintain. And then we have our tribes, which was that pre-populated, that research that we did. And we ended up having to add people and groups as we found them, but it was a starting place. So the survey form seems like it's really long. This is actually a screenshot. These are screenshots from the back end of Airtable, not the live version, because I wanted you to see not only what the form is on the left. So if you get into a collection and there's no material over here, then these conditional fields don't come up. And so it makes it so that, it's a lot quicker to be able to go, oh, nothing in here, moving on. Or yeah, maybe there is something in here. You'll get prompted to answer some more questions. And so it's a nice, fast way to be able to go through these things. So this is the paper the article that Kim and I wrote on our project. It is in the American Archivist. So if you have questions about what we did and the survey results and how we thought about things, how we reflected on things, and kind of what our next steps are, please check it out. And thanks for listening all.